Now I welcome Deepthi. Deepthi Tiwari was lucky to discover Sri Aurobindo while yet a teenager. It was his evolutionary vision that organized and formed her subsequent life choices. She moved permanently to Pondicherry in 1975 and soon after to Auroville. After 10 years of involvement in various Auroville activities, including organizing national and international seminars, in 1985 she started teaching at La School, the oldest Auroville school for teens and young adults, based upon the free progress approach. She has presented Auroville, speaking at Sri Aurobindo Philosophy and seminars, conferences both in India and abroad.
Namaskar, everyone. Shamla ji, Vardharajan ji, Sanjeev. It's always a delight to listen to you. I have to kind of shift my head away from that sweetness. At the end of Savitri, there is a line that says that to feel love and oneness is to live. So in some ways, we are all learning to live and arrive at that sense of feeling love and oneness. It's almost impossible as an individualized, egoistic center to endlessly feel love and oneness. And that's the key. And that's what they were sharing with us, that this self-giving creates a pattern that will be useful for the future. There's a line in Savitri where Sri Aurobindo speaks about, he saw the footsteps of the undreamed idea in the far avenues of the beyond. We are part of something that belongs so far into the future, and the will of Sri Aurobindo and Mother is to bring it down into the now, into the here and now. That's a very tall task. And one of the remarks that you made about social service and spirituality, in social service, we are treating, yes, the difference between social service and spirituality. I just wanted to say, when you're doing social service, you are actually acting down towards those you are lifting up. In spirituality, you are one and you're growing together. And that's the difference. We have to grow together. We cannot be exclusive. We cannot be treating the other as the other. I know that Auroville is going through a moment where there is so much of othering, but that's not the truth of Auroville. I want to take, because my topic is Sri Aurobindo's India. And that's the other thing, that just because you love and are in search of that, it doesn't stop you from loving other aspects. And India was beloved of Sri Aurobindo, of the Mother, and I'll read you some of the things they have to say about her. She's a living goddess, and we should love her too, and we should really discover her in our schools, in our education, because we cannot make sense of what Sri Aurobindo and Mother are offering us, the program and the action. Central to that is the spirit of India. So what is this spirit? What is this India that Sri Aurobindo envisions? I'm going to take you back to start with to a very early moment in Sri Aurobindo's development. Where did my bookmark go? In 1906, Sri Aurobindo is in Baroda. He has recently married a few years ago, and he's writing a letter in Bengali to his wife, who at that time is only 18. So put yourself in the shoes of Mrinalini. And Sri Aurobindo we have this letter because when the British captured Sri Aurobindo and threw him into jail, they searched his house and they picked up things that belonged to Mrinalini, and it was produced as evidence in the case against Sri Aurobindo, which was a case he was under threat of life. He was acquitted, but for 1 year he was locked up. And this letter, a Bengali letter, is available to us. He's telling her, Mrinalini. I have three madnesses. The first is this: I firmly believe that the accomplishments, talent, education, and means that God has given me are all His. Whatever is essential and needed for the maintenance of family has alone a claim on me. The rest must be returned to God. If I spend everything for comfort or luxury, then I am a thief. The second madness, which has recently seized hold of me, is I must somehow see God. All these God lovers, you have Vivekananda also, when he's Narendra, he's asking everybody, have you seen God? Sri Aurobindo says the agnostic was in me, the atheist was in me. Remember, he was educated in a Western milieu and he is discovering India. So this is part of his discovery. The second madness, which has recently seized hold of me, is I must somehow see God. If He exists, there must be ways to perceive His presence and to meet Him. However arduous the way, I am determined to follow that path. My third madness is that other people look upon the country as an inert piece of matter, a stretch of fields and meadows, forests and rivers. To me, she is the mother. I adore her, worship her. What will the son do when he sees a Rakshasa sitting on the breast of his mother and sucking her blood? So this is his madness. He was part of the extremist party. He was a freedom fighter and a Kshatriya too. But he says his power, the one he starts with, is Brahma Tejas, the power of knowledge. And with that power, he became one of the most dangerous men in the country. That's why the British tried to remove him. The reason why I brought this book also is I want to recommend that in all the schools, we could use it. It is Nirod Baran, Sri Aurobindo for all ages. Please use it, read it, discuss it with the kids. Tell them the story of this extraordinary being. We are here because of him, so we should know him. The kids should know him. And his love of India. Now I'm going to be jumping around a little bit. I'm taking you to 1967. Shyamala spoke about 64 when mother first announces Auroville. The period of the 60s is, like this period, a period of great ferment. And mother gives messages on various occasions. So this is a message she gives out. It's a text from one of Sri Aurobindo's essays on the date 4/5/6/7. So the 4th of May, 1967. Earth is the self-chosen habitation of a great divinity, and his aeonic will is to change it from a blind prison into his splendid mansion and high, heaven-reaching temple. This is from the Arya period. Sri Aurobindo writes it in one of his essays. Mother comments when she releases it, the divinity mentioned by Sri Aurobindo is not a person. This is a problem. When we think of the divine, we anthropomorphize. We make the divine into something a little bit human. The divine is a condition, is who we are, is what the electrons and molecules and all the particles of the universe is the divine. The divine is all things. The divinity mentioned by Sri Aurobindo is not a person, but a condition that will be shared by all those who have prepared themselves to receive it. So this is the task for Auroville. It's not to make, as Shyamala says, better schools and better roads and a city. It's to make a being that's able to share in the condition of the divine. That is our task. And my sense is that whatever difficulties we are having, if we can unite under that powerful aspiration of bringing the divine into manifestation, then many of the difficulties that look impossible will pass. And in 66, so I'm around in the 60s, some of the things Mother says. It is the pressure upon the entire earth of the force of truth which causes disorder, confusion, falsehood. Confusion and falsehood springs up everywhere in a refusal to be transformed. So we have to give ourselves to the transformation. I'm going to go to some of the things Sri Aurobindo says about India, but I want to first share with you what Mother says in the 60s about India. In the whole creation, the earth has a place of distinction because unlike any other planet, it is evolutionary with a psychic entity at its center. In it, India in particular is a divinely chosen country. So the intimation that we talk about Gaia, we talk about the mother principle that's been coming forward since the science of ecology came about is true. There is a conscious being at the center of Earth, and there is a conscious being at the center of India. And that's the being that we have to invoke. So then Mother says it is only India's soul who can unite the country. Externally, the provinces of India are very different in character, tendency, culture, as well as in language, and any attempt to unify them artificially could only have disastrous results. But her soul is one, intense in her aspiration towards the spiritual truth, the essential unity of the creation and the divine origin of life. And by uniting with this aspiration, the whole country can recover a unity that has never ceased to exist for the superior mentality. We in Auroville, and I'm going to read you what Mother says in 68 about the revelation that Sri Aurobindo gives her. We are tied to this work. Mother first reads out for All India Radio the text of her reminiscences of her life in India. So she reads this out, and then Sri Aurobindo gives her a revelation. She says, she's speaking to Satprem, Sri Aurobindo gave me a revelation. All of a sudden, Sri Aurobindo said, India has become the symbolic representation of all the difficulties of modern mankind. India will be the land of its resurrection, the resurrection to a higher and truer life. And the clear vision, the same thing which in the history of the universe made the earth the symbolic representation of the universe so as to concentrate the work on one point, the same phenomenon is now taking place. India is the representation of all difficulties on earth, and it is in India that the cure will be found. And then, that is why I was made to start Auroville. So, Auroville is tied to India in a manner that I don't think we can fully comprehend. But certainly, we should be paying attention. Because if we can measure up to whatever is being asked of us, because sometimes when you do not measure up, when you stagnate, when you are not doing what your soul has chosen for you to do, then sometimes life gives you blows. And Auroville is tied to this evolutionary process of Earth, and it is the center of accelerated evolution. So perhaps the Earth is waiting for us to do something. It's not as if one can decide what that thing is intellectually, mentally. It's the heart that knows. And perhaps not even the heart. It's, as Shamla says, she knew. She does it. We have to give ourselves for that. Okay, now I'm going to Sri Aurobindo. This was all just an introduction. In one of his essays, Sri Aurobindo says, what science could not provide, India offers. Brahman for the eternal goal, yoga for the means of perfection, dharma, swabhava niyatam karma for the rational yet binding law of conduct. So 3 things. There's 100 things. You know, in all of Sri Aurobindo's writings, India has a central role. If you look at his social and political thought, the human cycle, the ideal of human unity, these days I recommend everybody reads War and Self-Determination. The world is troubled by such terrible, terrible, impossible conflicts. Read what he says in War and Self-Determination. He has comments. If you read the comments he's writing up to November 1950, he has such insightful, incisive comments about the politics of the moment. So one of the things that you find in Sri Aurobindo and Mother, they see the world as it is, and they see it as it can be, and they bridge the two. And we, who are here because of them, should also read what they have to say about them. So, Brahman. Brahman gives you this idea of oneness. And oneness is the key. Sri Aurobindo says, when we find the oneness, the principle of variation is not destroyed, but finds rather its justification. It is not by abolishing ourselves, our own special temperament and power, that we can get at the living oneness, but by following it out and raising it to its highest possibilities of freedom and action. This is something that many people in India, outside of the devotees of Sri Aurobindo, do not understand. Because the whole of India is focused on what Buddhism as well as Advaita philosophy, Adi Shankara offered, and that is abandoning life. This yoga is about affirming life and also transforming it, lifting it up. So the oneness we seek doesn't abolish anything of what we are, but it takes out all the perversions of the ego, the perversions of the desire soul. And that's why the key is the psychic, because the psychic puts you into a dimension of mutuality, of harmony, of sweetness, of self-giving, and then the law of that status governs everything around you. Because this is another truth. If you live in the vital consciousness, the laws of the vital govern your life. You live in the mental consciousness, the laws that prevail in the world will control your life. You live in the psychic consciousness, and listen, you have to take a lifetime to find the psychic. But the aspiration towards finding the psychic puts you into a dimension that is different to the outer laws. So that's the key that Sri Aurobindo has a line in Savitri, the key is hid and by the inconscient kept. So we have to dig in our consciousness. You know, people who come along and try to say we are doing mother's work and they're trying to change you, sorry. The only thing you can change is yourself. The only thing you are in control of is your own consciousness. So we should be busy with changing our own consciousness. Too bad for those who want to change other people. They're not going to succeed, and they're not going to succeed in changing themselves too. Let's be busy with ourselves is the key to self-finding. Sri Aurobindo says that he gives India 3 tasks. He says the recovery of the old spiritual knowledge and experience in all the splendor, depth, and fullness is the first, most essential work. So the old spiritual knowledge and experience is contained largely in the Vedantic, that is the earlier Vedantic worldview, not the later Vedanta. So this is also confusing. When we are speaking about India, what are we speaking about? Sri Aurobindo speaks about 4 great syntheses. He speaks about different ages. He situates himself, though he appreciates everything. That's another thing with Sri Aurobindo. Even when he is not at all appreciative of something, he speaks of it in such a refined manner that he includes it in the wholeness. Sri Aurobindo's way of writing and way of speaking is always inclusive. You never come across exclusivity in Sri Aurobindo, and that is a language we should adopt also. We should be inclusive. Exclusivity is a falsehood because it's an ego position. So the recovery of the old spiritual knowledge and experience in all its splendor, depth, and fullness is the first, most essential work. What is Auroville doing about this work? What are we in education doing about this? The flowing of the spirituality into new forms of philosophy, literature, art, science, and critical knowledge is the second. An original dealing with modern problems in the light of the Indian spirit and the endeavor to formulate a greater synthesis of a spiritualized society is the third and most difficult. Its success on these three lines will be the measure of the help to the future of humanity. You will find this in the book that is called The Renaissance of India, which has a series of essays. Sri Aurobindo speaks about these as saying that he wanted to revise them because there's a lot of material in there which is temporal, which is topical, which belonged to the Arya period, where he's criticizing some of the writings that are being written largely by the Occidental voices that are analyzing Indian culture. Sri Aurobindo wanted to remove all of that, but there is so much in there which is such a fabulous analysis of the true Indian spirit. We should be reading this. And even if we cannot read the whole, I recommend this little booklet that the ashram publishes, which is called The Renaissance in India, which is a series of 4 essays. There are many, many essays on many different topics in that full book, The Renaissance in India, but this is a little booklet that we could read. And I recommend that all the schools get multiple copies of it. Even if you can't read it with younger students, you can read it and let it inform your consciousness. So, Sri Aurobindo says, our call is to young India. It is the young who must be the builders of the new world. Auroville is a place of eternal youth. So whether you are 80 or 8, you belong to the youth of the future. There are some keys. In the Upanishad, there was something that the Upanishadic period did, which was to generalize the quest. And the quest was, there is a knowledge of becoming. In traditional Indian education, there were 68 different subjects. The kalas, those are the arts, the sciences, weaponry, every student learned that. Men and women were in these universities. This is before this patriarchal approaches, though there is always a tendency for patriarchy. But women also were educated. They were rishikas as much as they were rishis. Huh? Jhansi is much later. She belongs to the modern age. I'm talking about the Vedic age, which is prehistoric. But there, students were going both to, boys and girls would go to the Gurukul system. So what was the key? There was a difference made between knowledge of becoming, and that is the knowledge of the external world, the sciences and the arts and all the other things. And there was the knowledge of being. And that came under that question, what is that, knowing which everything can be known? Kasmin vijnate sarvam idam vijnatam. And the answer was, you are that. Aham brahmasmi. Sarvam khalvedam brahmanasti. Soham, we are that. And so students were told, you are that. It's not something you have to find from outside. It's something you have to unveil, uncover, dive in. The soul has to dive into the infinite. The mind has to soar into the infinite. Those are lines from Savitri. So, kasmin vijnate sarvam idam vijnatam. in our schools, this is a question we should be asking. That even when we are teaching external knowledge, the main purpose is that inner knowledge, because the inner knowledge is the key. If the soul can come forward, everything is replaced. So that's about Brahman. I should hurry up. Sri Aurobindo says yoga for the means. Now, it is true that the present government has managed to make a World Yoga Day, and all over the world people are doing Hatha Yoga exercises. But yoga is a psychological science. It's practical psychology. If you want to understand yourself, and if you want to understand the youth who you're working with, yoga is the key. Yoga is a science, a psychological science of self-discovery, and in the measure in which you find yourself, you will find the psychology of the students. By the way, psychology is of manifestation. The soul doesn't have psychology. The soul is a person. Personality belongs to mind, life, and body. So when we are looking at personality, we are looking at things that may be added, layers that are added depending on where you were born, depending on how you were brought up, depending on the kind of education you had. One of the things that Mother says, and I want to say this very strongly right now because there is a pressure from the other side, she wanted fresh people. She said, I want my own children. I want them to teach, because traditional education systems put mental constructions on your nature which takes forever to take apart. So if you can come fresh, if you can seek sincerity, and if Aster, who was asked to teach at the age of 18 by Mother, she said, but what do I teach? She says, be one lesson ahead of your students. So Mother is not asking much, but she's asking a lot in terms of psychology. So all of us, particularly, it's going to be longer to change governance, longer to change economy, but we can bring in changes into education. So let us try to embody something extraordinarily different, that the whole world will come and look at Auroville and say, yeah, that's something interesting. What are you doing here? Let's make that. One of the most interesting things I like is there's so many Indians in this room right now, which means the fact that all the so-called outreach schools, we are together making the journey. It's about time we did that. The last thing that Sri Aurobindo speaks about is dharma. These are master ideas of Indian thought, and we need to develop a seeing, feeling, living idea of what they mean, each of us in our own way. That's the other thing that Sri Aurobindo offers us. He doesn't tell you this is the way. He asks you to discover it, which means you find it in your own unique way. But find it. Do not just accept second-hand definitions. There's no time. I had a long text about dharma because I feel that's almost the most powerful thing, because it's something to do with living. Sri Aurobindo uses svabhava niyatam karma, meaning action based on your self-nature. But there is a little key in there. You are the divine. So your action has to embody that divinity, not your vital nature, not your egoistic, rancorous, narrow-minded, limited nature. Your svabhava, your true svabhava, has a divine origin, and that's what we have to manifest. I will just speak quickly about the 4 syntheses of Indian thought, which I want you to look at. Sri Aurobindo speaks about the first great synthesis, which is the age of intuition, which belongs to the Veda and the Upanishad. There are so many books he's written about this. Commentaries on the Upanishad, The Secret of the Veda, the Hymns to the Mystic Fire. In his social and political thought, in the human cycle, he speaks a lot about this age, because this was a spiritual age. But it was not generalized in humanity. Then you had the next stage, which is what he calls the age of Tantra. Tantra is a very powerful system which comes in later, and it corrects the balance where we look at Godhead as Purushottama, now we look at her as Parameshwari. So there is a balance. We need to study what that means. But Tantra in Sri Aurobindo's yoga is totally not like the Tantra of traditional Indian thought. So we need to see what Sri Aurobindo has to say about that. So the age of the Veda and the Upanishad, the age of the Bhagavad Gita and Tantra, very important. This Bhagavad Gita and the age of Tantra is also the age of the Mahabharata and Ramayana. If you want to make sense of India, the Mahabharata and the Ramayana are keys. Why are our students not familiar with these stories? When I first started to teach, you will remember, in Kullapalayam, they would have, in the village, they would have a performance with shadow puppets, and there would be a festival and the stories would be presented. Now with TV, people no longer know these stories, but these stories are the key to the psychological character building. Sri Aurobindo says the Mahabharata and the Ramayana were written with the consciousness of creating the Indian type. We need to know them. We need to discover them. It's very, very important. So these are the different, I'm only giving little snippets because I really think the key to Auroville's next step is a discovery of the truth of ourselves through the truth of India and the truth of the world. I always like to end with an invocation to the psychic. Mother says true spirituality transforms life. So if our life is not transformed, we are not practicing what we are being asked to do. So I said the Veda and the Upanishad, that's the first stage. Then the Gita, the Puranas, the Tantra, and then we come to, you have the Bhakti saints, you have all of that. And actually, I would say Sri Aurobindo is the next great synthesis. The mother is very conscious of saying that he doesn't belong to history. He belongs to the future. He's seeing the footsteps of the undreamed idea and he's bringing it into the present. Somebody asked mother about how do you give me a sense of what it means to be in the psychic atmosphere. So she says, in India, they have a very interesting symbol. And that's the symbol of Radha. Everybody knows the story of Radha and Krishna. Radha is just a gopi. Krishna, in the historical context, he has other wives. He has Satyabhama, he has Rukmani, he has other wives. But Radha is Radha and Krishna in Vrindavan. And the whole Vaishnava tradition, which is the Bhakti tradition, is woven around Radha and Krishna. If in South India, you have these fabulous, wonderful, why are we not just exploring them? Poets, dreamers, the Alvars. And then you also have the Shaivites, the Nine Mouths. So all of these are Bhakti saints, and we should be exploring these we should be offering them to the larger Indian context, because Sri Aurobindo's perspective is unique on all of these. Actually, the Bhakti movement began in Tamil Nadu. So this is something we should be exploring, particularly in Tamil Nadu. When did this Bhakti movement begin? How did it develop? How did it travel everywhere? Vrindavan is still next to Mathura, but the Bhakti movement was born in the south. So India is one country. Our language should never be divisive. It should be inclusive. So everything that happens in Tamil Nadu should include the whole. Tamil Nadu can be a leader. It's the center of Indian culture. If it embodies it. If we deny it, then we are going in another direction. So Radha. So Mother says, she gives us a prayer of Radha. And this is your psychic being. So while you're listening to me reading it, think of your psychic speaking. In this psychic, the psychic has the divine, and the divine is the divine lover. O thou, whom at first sight I knew for the Lord of my being and my God, receive my offering. Thine are all my thoughts, all my emotions, all the sentiments of my heart, all my sensations, all the movements of my life, each cell of my body, each drop of my blood. Notice all these divisions. These are all parts of ourselves. We should be able to recognize what is coming from the emotions, what is coming from sentiments, what is coming from sensations, what is coming from life movements, what is coming from our cellular body structure, what is coming from our blood. I am absolutely and altogether thine, thine without reserve. What thou wilt of me, that I shall be. Whether thou choosest for me life or death, happiness or sorrow, pleasure or suffering, all that comes to me from thee will be welcome. Each one of thy gifts will be always for me a gift divine, bringing with it the supreme felicity. You want to be in a state of joy? Be in your cyclic. It doesn't depend on external circumstances. It depends on an attitude of consciousness. So that's our prayer, that's our hope, that's our dream. I thought this was the end, but I'm going to read you what Mother said about India on the 15th of August, 1947. There are the 5 dreams of Sri Aurobindo where he embodies all the things, and in each of those 5 dreams, India has a central role. This is what Mother wrote on the 15th of August 1947 when India became free. And she made this map in the 50s, which is not the map of modern India. It's there in the ashram playground still. O our Mother, O soul of India, Mother who has never forsaken thy children, even in the days of the darkest depression, even when they turned away from thy voice, served other masters and denied thee. Now, when they have arisen and the light is on thy face, in the dawn of thy liberation, in the great hour, we salute thee. Guide us so that the horizon of freedom opening before us may be also a horizon of true greatness and of thy true life in the community of the nations. Guide us so that we may be always on the side of great ideals and show to men thy true visage as a leader in the ways of the Spirit and a friend and helper of all the peoples. That's what Mother invokes for India, and that's what we invoke for Auroville.
A very wonderful morning. Thank you. I was taken to a new realm today by you because it's my observation whenever there is something happening in Auroville, there is a hesitation, there is something of some apprehension or something like that to talk about India, to talk about nationalism. They think it is something not in consonance with Auroville. But actually it is not so. But the understanding is that lacking, that how it is centered, that India and nationalism, how it is centered for all the 5 dreams of Sri Aurobindo. Here, it's not much talked about. So, but yours was a different approach in this. I salute you, because people, they are not bold enough to say all these things in Auroville especially. I'm very sorry. I do not know why it is, why this situation is. I don't know. I'm just an outsider. There are so much hesitation to say that in Uttarapara speech. It was given to Sri Aurobindo to say that Sanatana Dharma is nationalism. It is not his imagination. He has been asked to say it to all of us. Go and say this to these people of India. But we are hesitant to use this single sentence. Sanatana Dharma is nationalism. I think it's a bit taboo to speak this in Auroville. So I think from this day it must change. Thank you. Thank you for your brilliant articulation. Thank you. Sorry, I'm not offending anybody.
No,
I'm
I think perhaps the reason why there is a hesitation is because the India that Sri Aurobindo speaks about is universal, is inclusive. Sri Aurobindo says that everything that has come to her has to be included. So perhaps the reason why the Uttarpara speech is not the Sri Aurobindo of Pondicherry is because he added more into his. He says that, you think I haven't changed? What happened in those 40 years when I was in Pondi? He was 40 years in Pondi. After the Arya period, he was in his room. From 1926 to 1950, he was in his room. And his concern was for the totality of the earth consciousness. So when we speak about India, we have to speak about an inclusive India that transcends any religion. Because the age of religions is gone. You don't have to believe in anything. You have to embody and to live. And one of his sentences says that India fell to the dust because she didn't live sufficiently her ideas of the spirit. So let us be very careful of not only, Jyoti, when she asked me to speak, it came to me very strongly that I do need to speak about India, but it is true that I hesitate. In my classes, my students get quite a dose, but on a general level, it's very difficult to find a nuance that is inclusive. Auroville is a universal town, and everything that everyone who's come from every corner of the world brings something precious. And the future needs everybody, nobody to be excluded. And that is India the Mother. So when we speak about her, let's be very conscious we speak about this vast, spacious, the whole world can take refuge in her single heart. That's a line from Savitri, by the way. The divine is looking for a human consciousness that's wide enough. And he says about Savitri, in her he met a wideness like his own. Her heart was so wide that the whole wide world could take refuge in her single heart. That is the India we invoke. That is the India we speak about. Transcending all religions, including all the religions as means of study, as something that belongs to the human past. But the human future is spiritual. It is the border between religion and spirituality is small, but there is a border. It is to live. To be spiritual is to live inwardly and outwardly the truth of what you say. Religions give you a escape. You practice it a little bit, and that's enough. No, you never stop practice being, embodying your spirit.